taxi cab license. Well, that locks out people out of the self-employment market. I mean, what type of skill do you have to know to be a taxi cab driver, to at least to be making a living? Yeah, right, you're at least starting. You need to know the town you're living in, so you know where to take the customer. And you know how to drive. That's it. That's anti-poor, anti-self-supporting. A lot of the other employment regulatory codes make it very difficult. In the United States, there's long been a battle between union membership to be employed versus what they call the United States right to work states. You can get a job without having to belong to a union in that profession, occupation, or trade. Historically, unions have often worked as barriers to entry of new workers because you want to limit the supply of workers to keep the wage up, right? Supply and demand. The smaller the supply, the higher the price. The fewer workers competing against you in your particular occupation, the higher the wage. So they have union barriers. You have to join the union, you have to be an apprentice, you have restrictions on being able to search for a job on your own. That's anti-poor. That's anti-poor. Now, it's not the case now, but historically, going back 60 or 70 years, unions often were white-dominated, in fact, all white-dominated, and they used that as a way back then to keep blacks from entering their sectors of the economy and competing against them. So besides the economic factor, keep wages artificially high by keeping out worker competition, it was also a racial device. Now you can go down the line of a whole variety of such ways that government regulations, restrictions, production controls make it extremely difficult or more difficult for a person to start a business, to begin a business, to manage a business, to be self-supporting. Or minimum wages that raise the cost of employing people. You know, if you say that the minimum wage is $5, for example, okay, that's not the full cost of that employer to hire you, you know. He has to pay pension or Social Security taxes. He has to pay health care taxes for employing you. The real cost of hiring you, not just the wage, either the market wage or the government minimum set wage, but all of these other tax costs of employing you as a worker, can add $2 or $3 to the cost per hour of having you on the job. Well, there's got to be a way to cut those taxes by starting to cut those programs to diminish these indirect costs of employing a person and making them self-supporting. It can't obviously be done overnight. The system didn't get as intrusive and manipulative and comprehensive overnight. These welfare programs grew over many decades. And obviously they're not going to go away overnight. And there have become people who have heavily dependent upon them, and you sort of need transition period to adjust to this. But you have to have the determination and the intention to want to be moving away from the existing system, and to have the principled focus to start a process that within a reasonable time, not like saying, we'll cut the debt, like they do in the United States. Either President Obama or this Paul Ryan, and the Republican in the House of Representatives. Oh, well, we have a 10-year plan to cut the debt. Yeah, you only make the cuts on the 9th and 10th year. You're not even going to be in office in then. Who even knows when you're going to be alive paying taxes then? Of course you can talk about 10 years from now. Because you're not telling anybody who the cut in government spending is going to fall upon. You have to be principled enough to say that we're going to introduce reforms, and starting now with these annual targets over a reasonable horizon, so as to radically reduce the presence of these programs that harm the poor and not help them, destroy the open competitiveness to be job creating and wealth creating, so that people can become self-supporting and independent, and develop and cultivate these senses of shared responsibility without the government. That has to be done, and it can be done.
What would become of, children from disadvantaged families, or let's say the adults are irresponsible, they have poor judgment, and they pay for their mistakes, so what becomes of their children in terms of education and health and so forth?
Well, I think that would be taken care of the same way it was in the 19th century when government didn't do these things. There's an economic historian named Edwin West, and he has a book called Education and the State. And he demonstrated that between 1790 and 1830, 2/3 to 3/4 of the entire British population was made literate during the emerging Industrial Revolution with no compulsory education. This was done by private schools for profit, non-profit charity schools, self-help associations, and the British population was made literate at a time of mass poverty, long works in the industrial factories of that time, so that in one generation, virtually everyone in Britain was made literate. When before that, everybody except for some people in the church and the aristocracy, everyone else just put an X when they had to sign a document because they couldn't even write their own name. Also, the problems of abused children, underprivileged children, abandoned children. As I was suggesting, in the 19th century, there were these wide associations of charitable hospitals, charitable orphanages, charitable children assistant organizations and groups. There's an entire literature about it that sort of fell through the cracks and has only been recently been rediscovered and written about this period. Now, does that mean that nobody ever falls through the cracks? Of course they do. You know, does it mean that no person is ever going to be abused by a parent? Of course not. I mean, you can't make a perfect world. The question is here, what system is most likely, again, to be able to effectively handle and manage and be nuanced enough to find solutions to the problems, taking the long-run view more frequently, more effectively, more successfully for more people? And I'm still just persuaded that these private solutions, where people have to take responsibility, where they're thinking about the specific individuals to help, rather than just being a caseworker who's a civil servant, who has, you know, a certain number of children who've been housed in foster homes to just check and go around them. Because you just check on them, as long as they're not being beaten or hurt or something, you just move on to the next one. Well, you're just doing your job. You're just filling out the forms and showing your superiors that you met with the families, the kid didn't seem to be beaten or being starved to death next. And I just believe that that is not the same with these private alternatives. Because there the concern is not just to fill out forms, but to solve the problems of those who fall upon these needs, including abandoned or abused or underprivileged children. I still think that that's a better solution. Okay, let's quickly take a break and the final session. Thank you.